What is up, you guys? It's Dom here from JoJo Productions, and today we're talking about the Panasonic GH5S. Is it still good enough in today's world of crazy cinema cameras? This is the Panasonic GH5S. It first came out in like 2018, and at that time it was definitely a leader in video. But since then we've had cameras like the Panasonic S1H, we've had the Sony A7S III, God, we've had Blackmagic come out with some great stuff. There are way better cameras than this GH5S, but I think this is still good enough, and I think this can still keep up with most cinema cameras. So the first thing that makes this camera still something desirable, I guess, is the price. You can get one of these pretty cheap now. I got mine from KEH for about 1,500 bucks used, but when I pulled it out of the box, it was pretty much new. It was in great condition. There were no scuffs, no scratches on the screen at all, and it even came with a full battery. So yeah, you can get one of these cameras now for like a major steal. Check out KEH. The image from the GH5S is still fantastic even to this day. It is shooting 4K 10-bit 422 400 megabits per second, and getting that in a camera under $2,000 nowadays is like pretty much impossible. But this is delivering that, and I am super impressed. What kind of stuff do I shoot with the GH5S? I shoot pretty much everything that has to do with video. I no longer am using like a G7 or my D7200. The only time that I will pull out those cameras and shoot with them are when I need multi-camera shoots. I have used this in commercial shoots for brands like Jack Daniels, Armani. I have used it for Ralph Lauren, YSL, you know, Apple Jacks. I've done a whole bunch of different commercial stuff. I've used it for some music videos. I've done it for workout training videos. I use it in low light club conditions for like dances and stuff like that. Pretty much anything that has to do with video, I am definitely shooting on the GH5S. So frame rates are a really big thing nowadays. If a camera doesn't have like over 60 frames per second, I guess it's just really not good enough for slow motion. Yeah, my G7 has it, my Nikon D7200 has it. I kind of agree. At times, I don't think 60 frames per second is enough. I think sometimes you do need more. For example, when I am doing my product shoots and I'm pouring stuff or dropping stuff, 60 frames per second is just isn't enough. We need slower frame rates. So the Panasonic GH5S shoots up to 240 frames per second. I have used the 240 frames per second for an Apple Jacks commercial when I was like pouring milk and pouring cereal. Yeah, and it looked fantastic. It looked like something that you would get out of a camera that is 4 or 5 or 6 times as much as the GH5S, but it was just shot on the GH5S, and that's really impressive. So, like I said, frame rates are a pretty cool thing. I do shoot a lot of 60 frames per second. I'm not saying that 60 frames per second is not good enough, because I do, for the most part, do shoot 60 frames per second because I think it is enough. If I need a little more, I'll bump it up to like 120. I like 96 frames per second. That looks really good. If I really do need that super slow motion, again, I do have that 240 frames per second. So I have plenty of options. I'm not worried about it. So if I'm doing like low light slow motion, I will shoot most of the time 60 frames per second. And that seems to do the trick pretty well. It gets the point across. We're trying to show something slow motion. And the biggest reason that I got the GH5S and why this camera still is better than most cameras out there is because of the low light performance. I can shoot up to 10,000 ISO on this camera, and I'm not even worried about it. For the most part, it is very clean. If I'm shooting against just black though, I have noticed that there is some weird color noise. I get like a really weird kind of like green cast. So that's kind of weird, but for the most part, in post, I will just crush the blacks, and really you don't even see the issue and you don't even see the noise. I think the only thing that I really have to do to the image is probably, for the most part, bring up the colors. The colors do tend to get really desaturated when I boost up the ISO, but it's a pretty easy fix. Just bump up the saturation in post. Something that I absolutely love about the GH5S are all of the buttons on this thing. Not necessarily the way that they feel, because they do feel great. They do give a nice, you know, nice click, so you know that you've actually pushed a button. But the fact that there are so many customizable buttons on this thing, you can just go crazy with it. You can set just about anything to just about any button. So that is super nice, so you're not like digging around in the menus all the time. Now I really haven't done too much of that because for the most part, I'm shooting usually 24 frames per second, or I'm shooting 60 frames per second, or like 120 or something like that. And it's usually pretty easy to switch over. I have enough time most of the time. But yeah, if you need customizability, if you need to customize the camera, you can definitely do it, because there are a slew of customizable buttons. I think there's like 10 or so, which is absolutely crazy. So this is a little more popular in modern cameras, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I absolutely love the dual memory card slot thing. It's great, man. When I'm shooting something like a wedding, something that I know that I cannot lose, that I'm getting paid lots of money to do, and I only have one chance to do it, like a wedding. Yeah, no, this thing is filled with 2 cards, and we are doubling up what the camera is writing on those 2 SD cards. So this is really nice. It's a nice insurance thing. It's nice to know that I have you know, a backup. So another fantastic little feature that actually I didn't think I was gonna use and like a whole lot is actually the swivel screen. I love it. It is fantastic. It's really nice. You know, when I don't want to like put a monitor on the top, I can just, you know, there. I can just pull out the screen and just shoot. It's really, really nice. The G7 had it, so that's kind of what started it for me. Also, my D5200 had it, so I guess I've had a few cameras with the swivel screen, but it is really nice. Especially coming from shooting like a D7200, which had a fixed screen. It did make those weird, awkward angles really hard, but this, it really is no issue now. So let's talk about the lenses that I'm using for this camera. I'm not using any native Panasonic lenses. I did decide to go to the speed booster route because I wanted to add on my Nikon lenses, because I have a whole ton of Nikon lenses. Also, I went with the speed booster route because, well, it's going to give me a bigger image, and it's going to let in more light, which is even more fantastic because, as we know, it does fantastic in low light. Also, it gives me a wider field of view, which is fantastic because, as we know, the sensor is a little smaller on this, and sometimes I do need that just a little bit extra, and the speed booster definitely gives it. So I do recommend a speed booster, but lenses, I am just using Nikon lenses. For the most part, I will have a 35mm strapped onto this thing, the 50mm, and my Tamron 10-24, and really that's about all I need. If I need something a little longer, I have an 18-300, and I also have a broken 100mm that I'm obviously not going to be able to use. But yeah, that's what I do for lenses. I'm using the speed booster with adapted Nikon lenses. You can do it for Canon. I don't know if you can do Sony. I don't know, maybe. But for the most part, I know you can do Nikon and Canon lenses, and those do seem to be the 2 most popular in the industry. As you can tell, this camera is absolutely phenomenal, but not every camera is perfect. Let's talk about a couple little downside things and how to really overcome these downsides. So I guess my biggest gripe is the fact that it doesn't have image stabilization, but I really don't care about that, because most of the time it's going to be on a tripod or it's going to be on my gimbal. Really, honestly, I'm not too worried about it, but if you do like that image stabilization stuff from the GH5 or any other camera like that. Just know that this does not have it. There is a reason why it is like this, and that is because they wanted video in mind first. Now, for the most part, when you look at a big cinema camera, your cinema cameras are not going to have image stabilization, IBS, whatever you want to call it, because as filmmakers, we want to control what the sensor does. And sometimes IBIS gets really weird and wonky, and you can see it in the corners. And when you're going for professional, image needs to be perfect, you cannot have that. So that is really the biggest reason as to why they did not put IBS in the sensor. Let's talk about battery life. Battery life from the GH5S is actually really good. I can normally shoot about a full day's worth of footage, which is pretty good. So I'm usually getting about, God, I don't know, maybe sometimes 3 or 4 hours. Depends on how much I turn off the camera too, though. So if I'm turning off the camera in between shots, yeah, I can do a whole full day. If I am not turning off the camera, I guess it cuts it down a little more, but it still does really, really great with battery. So that is fantastic. It's also just really nice to have a battery that lasts a long time, especially when I'm out in the field doing something like a wedding where I just, I just don't want to fuss about my battery. I just don't want the battery slowing me down. And that's like one of my biggest complaints about like my D7200 is that the battery would just be gone within like 45 minutes. So this is a really big improvement, and it's been a really nice improvement too. So there you go. That's the GH5S. I think this camera is absolutely still worth it in today's era of crazy video cameras. Yeah, this still is going to put out a phenomenal image. Don't let the sensor size hold you down. You can get Metabone speed boosters, you can get faster lenses, but also, of course, the Panasonic GH5S is already incredible in low light conditions. So really there's not much holding me back as far as shooting. I say just get out there and shoot. If the equipment helps you shoot, fantastic. This has definitely done me a lot of good. It is a huge step up from my D7200 and my little G7 here in every freaking way. Frame rates, battery life, customizability, low light, overall 4K image. The vlog is fantastic with like 13 or 14 stops of dynamic range at those native ISOs. Yeah, wow, this is just a monster camera, and everything that it has to offer is absolutely fantastic. So yes, I think that this camera is 100% worth it in today's crazy industry of video cameras. There you guys go. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. If you loved it, subscribe. If you have any questions or comments about the GH5S, please let me know, and I will be sure to get to those. And until next time, we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.